be punished for not stopping her friend's suicide. Prosecutors say Michelle Carter's text messages actually encouraged Conrad Roy to take his own life. But should she be held responsible for his decision?
If she really loved him as she said she did, why didn't she try to persuade him not to?
Emotional manipulation could be found to be on somebody who's very, very vulnerable to get them to do what they want them to do under a circumstance where they know that the person is likely to listen to them and likely to do it, and they know that if they do it, they're going to die.
I'm Lisa Bloom, sitting in for Dr. Drew. Should a young woman serve time for encouraging her boyfriend to commit suicide? I'm back with Mark, Judy, Yodit, and on the phone is Beth Karras. Okay, take a look at this text that Michelle sent to a friend right after Conrad's death. She writes, like, honestly, I could have stopped it. I was the one on the phone with him, and he got out of the car because the carbon monoxide was working, and he got scared. I told him to get back in. Get back in. I think those are the three key words. Yodit. So does her showing remorse help her case when essentially she's made this confession in writing in a text?
I don't think so. But look, as disturbing as her text messages were, can we honestly say that but for her text messages, this young man would not have gone through with the suicide? Because you have a man who's been, or a young man who's been depressed. He's tried multiple times to commit suicide. Is it just solely her text messages? Because I think that we're kind of getting into a dangerous area here. Because I mean, there's phrases that kids use nowadays that they go and say, "Go kill yourself." And they may be talking to someone who actually has thought about that and goes and does. There's actually stories of that.
That's
where
right.
Teenagers have actually gone and killed themselves.
Well, you know what? Nobody should say that. So, nobody should ever say, go kill yourself.
No, absolutely not, but they do.
Mark Eiglarsh, go ahead.
But they do.
Okay, I agree with you 100%. She shouldn't have done it, and I actually think the jury is going to hold her criminally responsible. So now let's get to the bottom line. Judge Bloom and the rest of the panel, I want to know what your bottom line is. You sentence her, you have anywhere between probation and 30 years in prison. What do you give this teenager for what she did?
Well, you know, she was 17 at the time. I don't believe sentencing 17-year-olds to life in prison or even 30 years. That may surprise you. So I would have to look at everything before I made that decision.
No. I want an answer.
Well,
I want an answer from somebody.
Guess what? I'm the one guest hosting today, Mark Eiglarsh. So I don't think you have the power to make. Also, you're far away in another studio, so forget about it. Judy Hall, let me go to you on a little bit more serious topic, because I think this is a very serious case when we're talking about the suicide of an 18-year-old. Okay, I've had a number of suicides in my family, including my own father. You cannot stop people from committing suicide when they have made up their mind to do it. And I am loath to blame family members or friends for failing to stop it. And some of the stuff we just heard in court was, you know, she could have stopped him, etc. We're not holding people responsible for failing to stop it. That's entirely different from encouraging it in the moment, saying, get back in. That's a whole different thing, right?
That's absolutely a whole different thing. And Lisa, you're right. When somebody is that depressed and they make up their minds to kill themselves, they may do it on their own without having any intervention whatsoever. And there is history of this girl trying to help Conrad through this. There's texts and texts and texts saying, don't kill yourself, get help. That's what I would do. At some point it changed, and it may have just been her own emotionality, getting frustrated with him, trying to call him on his bluff. That's all possible. I think the problem here, though, is would he have actually gone through with this particular suicide attempt?
Right.
Was it for the fact that she didn't say those things?
Right. And Mark Eiglarsh, that's what we call the but-for factor. But-for, I mean, he was getting out of the truck. He had changed his mind. He was going to walk away from the carbon monoxide. She says, get back in. He gets back in, and unfortunately, he dies. How does the defense get around that?
Bad facts. And what I do is, after, well, I try not to go to trial because, quite frankly, I don't think it's a good case in front of a jury. I try to work something out with the prosecution. A 17-year-old girl, I would argue, just so we're clear so I don't get the hate mail, she's responsible. But what I argue as a defense lawyer is her brain is not fully formed. She's a teenager. The portion governing reasoning and judgment not fully formed.
That's true.
Let's not ruin her life for an isolated incident in an otherwise exemplary life.
And let's talk about remorse. And you know, after Conrad's death, Michelle organized a softball tournament in his memory. She raised $2,300 for mental health awareness. So, Beth, Was she trying to atone for a crime?
Maybe she was, and maybe she's trying to mitigate a potential sentence. I just want to explain what youthful offender is in Massachusetts. It's the prosecutor's discretion whether or not to bring a juvenile ages 14 to 17 up on youthful offender in that category, and that's what the Supreme Judicial Court, Massachusetts' High Court, had to deal with, whether it was a proper indictment as a youthful offender. So you have to show the person's between 14 and 17. She was 17, and then you have to show one of three other things: either previous Department of Youth Services commitment, she didn't have that; committed a certain firearms offense, she didn't have that; or she committed an offense which involves the infliction or threat of serious bodily harm. And the court said manslaughter inherently causes serious bodily harm. Now she faces either a juvenile sentence till she's 21 in juvenile detention, or an adult sentence up to 20 years, or a combination. She could get juvenile detention until she's 21 and maybe another year.
Okay, so if she's convicted, we're going to stay tuned and see what sentence she gets. Beth Karras, it's always good to talk to you. Reminds me of our old court TV days. And great job covering this case like you always do. Next.